Welcome to Ukraine Today, where we are joined by Mr. Yuriy Bugay from the Department of Public Procurement Regulation, part of Ukraine's Ministry of Economic Development and Trade. Yuriy, thank you for joining us.
Thank you for inviting.
So the Department of Public Procurement Regulation is a bit of a mouthful. Could you start by explaining to us what it is that your department does?
So in Ukraine we have a very large number of public entities. First of all, like ministries, starting from ministries, then going to state-owned enterprises and to kindergartens and schools. And since the majority, or if the majority of these entities are state-owned or state-controlled, they use money very often, or mainly from the state budget, on procuring goods, services, and works. We can talk about starting from building a new bridge or a new railway to buying, for instance, sausages for kindergarten. And since mainly public money are used for procuring it, we have a certain set of rules which define the process how they have to be procured. And the Department of Public Procurement Regulation is exactly responsible for it, for setting the rules. So it's a policy setter, but it sets the rules how this procedure should happen for all the entities which do this procurement.
So last year, Ukraine got a new government. Since then, there have been sweeping reforms through ministries, departments, government. How have these reforms affected your department?
If to be honest about this department, first of all, it's difficult for me to compare how it was before and how it is now, because I joined the department just recently in the beginning of April. And overall, the public procurement reform started as non-government initiative. So it started in 2014, just after the Revolution of Dignity, by a group of people who believed that this amount of money which we spend, and for instance in 2014 we spent more than 11 billion US dollars on public procurement, that this money should be better controlled. So they formed a group of activists and volunteers around an international organization which is which fights with corruption, or at least controls corruption in the world, which is called Transparency International. So around this organization, a group of volunteers formed. Also, they were joined by some experts from Georgia who did a very successful reform of public procurement in Georgia. And so they decided they need to do this reform, and as soon as possible. I can't say how much support they had in the beginning from the government, but the first goal which they set for themselves is to build an e-procurement system. And so since the beginning of 2014 until February 2015, it was the time when they formulated the ideology behind the electronic procurement system, and they started using the minimal viable product, so MVP, which is called Prozoro, and you can do a simple procurement via this platform. So then in February it was presented to the state authorities, to the state bodies which supported this idea. And then, after that, I can say that it became more or less and now fully official reform, which has been strongly supported by the minister and by the National Council of Reforms. And part of the people who were in the group of volunteers since 2014, they came into the ministry. For instance, the head of the department, Alexander Starodubtsev, he was one of the key coordinators of the volunteer group, and now he is the official head of the department.
Procurement regulation began as a volunteer initiative.
At least the reform, it began as a volunteer initiative, and it's still to a great extent a volunteer initiative, because on the one hand we have a group of us who are already on the official side. At the same time, Prozoro, which is the e-procurement system which is already being used in a pilot mode, it's so far officially it's owned by Transparency International. It will be transferred to the government, but it's still the reform is happening with strong help and involvement from volunteers, NGOs and us public servants.
So you said that in 2014 the Ministry of Economic Development and Trade in Ukraine said $11 billion was spent on public procurement. Now they say some 2.2 billion of that, so 20%, was lost for two main reasons. One of those was corruption, and the second was limited competition. So how is the e-procurement system, which you're now integrating, how is that going to rid corruption or prevent this level of corruption going forward?
Yeah, you're fully right. By our rough estimation, every year we lose around 20%, and it's rather pessimistic than optimistic. Actually, I don't know. So we can lose more money, but at least it's 20% of the money are lost. And indeed, you're right that we are focusing our strategy and everything what we do along the way on the key problem, as we identified it for ourselves, it's corruption. And it's been neglected for quite a long time, or at least it's been recognized publicly, but not internally. So now we are constantly focusing on corruption. And the thing which we believe will combat corruption and the problem of corruption is complete transparency. Transparency from the planning stage, from the stage when a kindergarten is planning what is going to buy next year, up to delivery and completion of the contract. So the whole process of planning the purchase, announcing the purchase, submitting the documents from the bidders, from the competitors who want to participate in this procurement, transparent auction or any other procedure, and next steps, everything should be transparent. That's what we are doing. That's why e-procurement or development of electronic system is the key priority for us. It's not a panacea, as we like to say, so e-procurement, electronization of procurement of the whole process will not solve all the problems and issues which we have, but it's the first and necessary step to open the data to the people, to the public, who have to control it and then follow it up.
How have people responded to this transparency?
I mean, it's difficult for me to say about the vast number of people, and we need to maybe conduct some social surveys. That's what we're going also to do in the end of the year, to see how the perception is changing. But so far, at least the key entities, public entities whom we are working with, they strongly support. And also we are gaining more and more support from different parts of authorities, from different NGOs. So yeah, I would say that it's positively supported, but we need to conduct some social surveys to see it.
So the Ministry of Economic Trade and Development said one reason for the loss of money was corruption, but another reason was limited competition. How much would you say corruption is the cause of there being limited competition?
Oh, I would say that it's a key source of the limited competition. We can say about other things which stop private businesses from going to public procurement, to the sphere of public procurement. And definitely we have regulations, the vast number of certificates which they need to provide, involvement of controlling bodies, and the constant monitoring from the state authorities. So there are definitely some restrictions. But the first thing is that business does not believe that they can win a public procurement contract, that everything is not predefined even before the tender has started. That's the key thing. That's why I mentioned it was not a joke, indeed, about the need for public survey and for constant monitoring, because it's one of our KPIs to see how much trust we are gaining from the business that you can win a public product. So, and if you don't trust that you can win, definitely don't go. So definitely corruption is one of the key things which we need to combat, and it will help to boost perception and trust to public authorities.
Yuriy, that is all we have time for. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you.
You have been watching Ukraine Today, where we have been joined by Yuriy Bugay from the Department of Public Procurement Regulation in Ukraine. Thank you for watching. We will return to the news.